Here we go!
Hi guys! Welcome to my first proper video! Today, I've decided that I'm going to attempt to do something a lot of people have done, fixing Mario Kart DS's retro cups. A lot of people are making videos related to Mario Kart World right now, so I think it's best if I do something different for now. I'm going to do this for every game, so this is just part one of a series. It's no secret that Mario Kart DS has undoubtedly the worst selection of retro tracks in the series. And no, Super Circuit doesn't count. The issue with DS is mainly that half of its retro tracks were originally flat, and the ones that weren't just got downgraded or watered down. However, a big issue was also the tracks selected. None of the tracks selected originally, aside from 2 tracks, were even in the Special Cup. We had 6 Mushroom Cup tracks, and overall most of these tracks were really easy. Even the 2 Special Cup tracks picked were made way easier, though I think they were too hard originally, so it's not the worst thing ever. Either way, this game's retro selection was just in the toilet. Another issue is the DS limitations, though I have my doubts, since the Nitro tracks are good for the most part. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoy this video. Did I cook or did I fluke? Let's find out! Keep in mind that I got the footage used in the video off of YouTube. Credits are in the description. Starting things off, I need to set a few ground rules. I have to pick 4 tracks from each game. 4 from Super, 4 from 64, 4 from Super Circuit, and 4 from Double Dash. I will also have 1 from each in each cup. While I can really choose any tracks I want, I have to consider what is best for the future of the series. The focus isn't only on improving Mario Kart DS, it's also on improving the future games. Also, the order of the games represented in each cup does not have to be in chronological order. I can order them in any way I want. Without further ado, let's start this thing! First up, we have the Shell Cup. Originally, this was just a cup full of beginner tracks, but it's time for me to change that. Of course, the first track has to be a beginner track, and I'm sticking with Mario Circuit 1. It was the first track of the whole series, so it makes sense that it would be the first track to get a remake. I don't have much to say, honestly, so I would just keep this track the way it is. I'm also keeping Moo Moo Farm, although I'm not a fan of this track, it does make sense to be here, and it's hard to ruin anyways. I would add in a few more Monty Moles since they're kind of tame compared to the original, but I was never a fan of this track anyways, so it can stay roughly the same. Peach Circuit was here originally, and okay, here's a hot take. I actually do not mind Peach Circuit being here. In my opinion, the Super Circuit circuits fit quite well into DS. They feel perfect for snaking, for instance, and I personally find Peach Circuit really overhated. That said, I am unfortunately cutting it regardless. We do not need the Shell Cup to be full of starter circuits, and since we already have one, we are not adding another. So, what Super Circuit track should replace it? Well, my friends, I was thinking Riverside Park. This track is actually pretty well liked in Super Circuit, to my knowledge. It's not an amazing track by any means, but I think it could work decently well for Mario Kart DS. I'm aware Mario Kart DS can't really modify its retro tracks, and I'm gonna be realistic here, but I'm not going to give it a glow up like it got in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass. However, one thing that I would change are the jumps. Mario Kart DS's jumping system is very weird. It's expected that it won't be very thrilling without tricks, but even then, I really hate ramps in Mario Kart DS. They look like speed boosts, yet they don't really boost you, they just send you into the air when you'd be way faster just driving straight, and there's nothing fun about it. Since the original Riverside Park had jumps, I'm not keeping them. Instead, I was thinking that since this is a 3D game, we could have some hills, some uphill and downhill slopes throughout the track. That way, when going over where the jumps need to be, you're actually just going over or under a previous part of the track. It would be pretty similar to the end of Figure 8 circuit. Or we could just have small hills that go over the previous parts of the track if we needed to keep it mostly flat. But that would be way too obvious, so I don't know about that. Either way, I'm sure Riverside Park could fit better into this spot than Peach Circuit could. So I think we should stick with it. Finally, we have Dry Desert. A great way to start off the Retro Track Cups would actually be this set. Instead of having 3 opening circuits and 1 oval for a first impression, having the first Mushroom Cup track from SNES, second Mushroom Cup track from N64, third Mushroom Cup track from GBA, and fourth and final Mushroom Cup track from GCN would work well. The only real issue with adding Dry Desert is, well, it's a hated track. It's actually pretty similar to Desert Hills if you think about it. I'm assuming the DS limitations would mean sacrificing the tornadoes, so really, this would just be a flat Desert Hills. I know that this track is really hated, but at least it means it doesn't need to come back in a future title. Also, I don't think it would get as much hate as the original got, since this would just be a more easy, watered-down version of the original. Not great, but it works. Aside from that, the track doesn't really need to be modified. It would just remain how it is except without the tornadoes. Also, there will be no Oasis section like there was in the original Mario Kart 8 remake. With that out of the way, that is our new Shell Cup. It may not be the best cup ever still, but I think we can firmly agree that we would take this cup over what we got originally. The only good thing about remaking loads of beginner circuits is that they won't need to be used again, but I think we're better off having a better first impression than just opening circuits. Now onto the Banana Cup. This cup was originally pretty mid, specifically because of the last 2 courses, and now I'm going to fix that. Also, from now on, the tracks won't be in chronological order in terms of game, I'm just placing them wherever I think they fit. And actually, I'm giving the first slot of the Banana Cup to a GameCube track. I just think it works well as the Banana Cup introduction. Obviously, I am not keeping Baby Park here, as that was just a really lazy decision. Baby Park was, of course, the easiest track to port over, since it's a tiny oval, but the physics of Mario Kart DS completely ruined it, so I am not letting it be here. I thought about the other options, and it was surprisingly hard to choose. No special cup tracks could fit in this early, and they'd probably get ruined. DK Mountain is too long, Yoshi Circuit is too complex to be here, Daisy Cruiser is too unique to get ruined here, Waluigi Stadium would be atrocious with the DS physics, Mario Circuit would just lose its obstacles and be too easy, and there's multiple other tracks I can't explain without spoilers, so I won't. I didn't see this track as an option originally, but when I was really stuck for options, I had no choice but to choose Peach Beach. This track is actually pretty simple, and obviously some of its mechanics wouldn't translate over to DS very well, but then again, they will never truly be translated to any future game. I know this track worked well as the first retro track of Wii, but in my opinion, no other GameCube track really works here, so I went with it. This would basically be a low quality version of Peach Beach, but honestly, I was never a fan of this track anyway, so I can't say I really care. I can understand if you disagree with this decision, but if you'd rather have Baby Park, I genuinely don't understand, but you do you. This track wouldn't be atrocious here like Baby Park was, so I think it's really the best choice. I can understand if you'd prefer Luigi Circuit, but I didn't add it for a reason I'll explain later. Next up, we have a track that I'm actually keeping exactly the same. By that, I mean same spot, same track. This track is Frappe Snowland. This was actually the perfect track choice to bring back to Mario Kart DS. It really doesn't get held back by DS's limitations at all, so it was definitely the right snow track to bring back. The only real change to this remake is that the snowmen damage you differently, but they still work well and it's completely fine. They are a bit easier to dodge due to the DS's easier controls, but that's to be expected, so we can't really change that. The only thing I don't really like is the music. Not because it's bad, but because I just prefer the original. It's not a big deal though, so I'd say this track can remain exactly the same as it is. Next up, I'm adding in a SNES course. Yeah, do you really think I'm going to let a Super Mario Kart course be the conclusion to any cup? No. Anyway, the Banana Cup originally had Donut Plains 1. While adding in a Donut Plains makes sense, adding in the first one as a Banana Cup track is just no. If Donut Plains 1 is being remade, it has to be a Shell Cup track. It doesn't fit in anywhere else. In the original, the main highlight of Donut Plains 1 is that it's easy and teaches beginners about mushroom shortcuts. It is a 100% beginner track, and the Banana Cup isn't about beginner tracks. So, I thought, why not Donut Plains 2? It's actually a pretty simple track. It has a similar layout to Donut Plains 1. The only real difference is that it doesn't have as many shortcuts, and it's a tad harder. On top of that, there's Monty Moles. I know we already brought back a Monty Mole track, Moo Moo Farm, but this track is more challenging and more interesting. And I think it works well here, much better than Donut Plains 1 did. As long as the Monty Moles get to stay, this track is okay. It's not going to be much different from what Donut Plains 1 was, aside from that. Sorry, I can't speak. Sorry. Finally, we're ending off this cup with a GBA course, since we already had one for each of the others. Originally for this cup, we had Bowser Castle 2. I'm really not a fan of this remake. However, since we have 7 2D Bowser Castles, and it's obviously too early to bring back any 3D Bowser Castles, we really do need a 2D one, and I think having it as the conclusion for the first half of the retro tracks makes sense. Obviously, I chose a Super Circuit one, as I don't think the SNES ones would translate very well here. GBA Bowser Castles 3 and 4 are way too long, so they're out, and Bowser Castle 1 is way too simple. So although I don't like this course, I actually think keeping GBA Bowser Castle 2 would be the best choice. I already mentioned this while talking about Lakeside Park, but the ramp physics in Mario Kart DS outright suck. The huge ramp section needs to be changed. So what did I think of? Just remove all the ramps, leave a few lava holes to dodge but not all of them, keep the speed boosts at the sides, but have fireballs shooting out in front of them. This makes for an interesting choice, where you can take the slower but safer middle route, or take the faster but riskier speed boosts at the side. As for the ramps before the final turn, they can stay, but with speed boosts before the jumps, so they don't feel as annoying to go over. Trying to fix this course isn't what I wanted to do, but I think it was a necessary inclusion, so I hope what I did to fix the course was good, since this course was originally one of the worst courses in the game, at least in my opinion. Moving on, we have reached the Leaf Cup. Controversially, this might be the cup I dislike the most in the whole game. I've seen people saying they enjoy it, but I think it needs some tweaks to work. I don't want to talk about this much longer, so let's get started. Firstly, I'm moving Mushroom Bridge to the start of the cup. It was originally the first track of the Flower Cup, so moving it here doesn't make sense, especially because of how much easier the track got. Since I already added 2 Mushroom Cup tracks from Double Dash, it does need to be in the Leaf Cup, but having it at the start seems more appropriate than at the end. I get that the DS limitations made this track automatically less interesting than the original, so I'm not expecting anything I really like the original in Double Dash. But the main reason I didn't like the remake originally is just that, well, the bridge shortcut is gone! It might not be as difficult as it was originally, but it would just be a nice alternate route, if handled well. If DS is gonna bring this track back, at least keep the bridge shortcut intact. If not, I'd honestly rather if it wasn't here at all. Secondly, I'm keeping GBA Luigi Circuit. I'm about to make a bold statement. I am really not a fan of when it rains in Mario Kart tracks, as I personally find it ugly. I'm very glad it only happened twice before Mario Kart World, excluding remakes, but I'm gonna explain why I kept it. As much as I personally don't like it, it's generally one of the more popular circuit tracks in the fandom, and my list generally goes off of what the fan base wants rather than what I personally want. I'm not the only Mario Kart fan out there, so I can't be selfish. Anyway, the reason I didn't add GCN Luigi Circuit was actually because I added GBA Luigi Circuit. Although both were there originally, I personally think it's weird remaking 2 Luigi circuits in the same game, especially considering that they're the only Luigi circuits, not counting Luigi Raceway up to this point. Like I said about Peach Circuit, I think the Super Circuit tracks fit really well into Mario Kart DS, and since I'm cutting Peach Circuit, I really wanted to keep this one. The alternative would be adding in both Peach Circuit and GCN Luigi Circuit like the original, which I really didn't want to do, so I think GBA Luigi Circuit and GCN Peach Beach work better as returnees for Mario Kart DS. Therefore, I'm going to stick in GBA Luigi Circuit one place earlier than it originally was, and leave it there. It doesn't need to be changed, even though I don't like it much. Now, I'm moving on to the new courses I'm adding to this cup. I'm giving the 3rd place to a new SNES track, which has canonically never been remade outside of Tour. I don't think you guys will be happy with its inclusion, but I'm not letting the awful Choco Island 2 stay, so I needed something to replace it. The track I chose is Vanilla Lake 1. I know it sounds crazy, but please guys, before you get out your pitchforks, just hear me out. Vanilla Lake 1 is a very circular, bland and boring track that does not really have any fans. The only thing it has going for it is obstacles stashed across the race, which makes it slightly more interesting than it otherwise would have been. It's still one of the worst tracks in the series, but listen, because of how small this track is, porting it over with its obstacles shouldn't be too hard. So, it should just function as a 3Dified Vanilla Lake 1. This track might seem unimpressive, but by getting it out of the way now, it doesn't need to come back later, and it means we've had the Vanilla Lake theme done with no pressure to do it again soon. I did consider adding Vanilla Lake too, since it's the better Vanilla Lake in my opinion, but I don't think DS could do a good job handling the water sections, while this track could at least not get ruined by DS's physics. Plus, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be as annoying as Choco Island 2 was originally. I put it in the Leaf Cup instead of the Lightning Cup because I think a circular track as short as this doesn't belong in the final cup of the game. Finally, to finish off this cup, we have another track that wasn't originally here. I have also never seen anyone else suggest this track for Mario Kart DS, so this might be a controversial choice. The N64 course I'm choosing to finish off the Leaf Cup is Royal Raceway. Before you go to the comments, please just hear me out on this. I know Royal Raceway is a bit of a complex track, and the DS limitations would most likely ruin the track. However, I also must say that Royal Raceway is basically the one track that comes to my mind when I think of a track that should have been in Mario Kart DS. Aside from being one of the more challenging circuit tracks, the main thing that really stands out about this track is being able to drive up to Peach's castle, which Mario Kart 8's remake removed. Am I expecting Mario Kart DS to be able to add it? No, of course not. But since Super Mario 64 was remade on the DS, and Royal Raceway was the Mario Kart 64 track... Did I say Mario Kart 64? I was meant to say Mario 64, bro. It makes perfect sense to bring it back here. Plus, as an Easter egg, we could even add in the Peach's Castle section for a mission in mission mode. I think that would work really well. So, the only thing about Royal Raceway I'm worried about is the big jump. I'm not too sure if the DS would be capable of it, but since the N64 could do it, I'm sure there's a way they could get it to work on DS. Aside from that, everything else about the track can stay the same as the original. Now, let's talk about the Lightning Cup. This is the final cup of the game, so naturally, it should probably be the best cup. Originally, the Lightning Cup was undoubtedly the best of the retro cups, but that's not saying much considering how bad the original selection was. The Lightning Cup could have been slightly improved, specifically with its first track, which is what I'm going to do. As I've said before, I am 100% cutting Choco Island 2 out of this game. It was a menace to society and this game's track selection. So, what track am I going to start off the Lightning Cup with instead? Well, my friends, I think the best choice is none other than GBA Sky Garden. This track was originally in the Lightning Cup, but in spot 3 because of the ordering having to be in chronological order. However, I think Sky Garden fits better as the introduction to the Lightning Cup. It's not a specifically hard track, since it was only halfway through Super Circuit's track selection originally. However, it's a fan favourite from Super Circuit, and it's an ideal track to port over to the DS. People like it. It's not too complex, so it'll translate to the DS fine, and it's one of the more creative track concepts for a Mario Kart track. Sorry if my pronunciations are bad. It happens with the autism sometimes. Sorry. Anyway, I honestly don't think this track needs to be changed at all, as it was probably the best out of the entire original DS retro selection. But I think it works better as an introduction introduction to the Final Cup, so it gives a good first impression for this Final Cup. Not too hard, but the best quality the retro tracks have to offer. Next up, I'm adding a track that was originally in the Leaf Cup, but I'm shifting it over to the Lightning Cup. You might have guessed what track I'm talking about. Yeah, it's Koopa Beach 2. As much as I hated the original version of the track, I don't really have any issues with it specifically being in DS. It's a circle, there's not anything to ruin, and yeah, I don't really care. However, I do think it belongs in the Lightning Cup, specifically because of how few special cup tracks there are in this game. The few there are should be in the Lightning Cup. I considered replacing it, but I couldn't think of any reasonable choices. The only one that came to mind was Ghost Valley 3, but I'm about to explain why I didn't keep it. At least Choco Island 2 isn't here. I also kept Banshee Boardwalk, but moved it up one spot. Since it was the penultimate track on 64, I think it makes sense to be the penultimate track of DS. And yeah, the reason I didn't add Ghost Valley 3 is because there's already a spooky track in this cup. I'm not a fan of this track originally due to me thinking it's too hard. Call it a skill issue if you want. But since it got watered down here, I actually don't mind it. So I think it works well here. And finally, we have the final track of the game. Originally, we had GCN Yoshi Circuit, but if you really think I'm gonna end the game with a derailed circuit, you're wrong! Obviously, the final track will still be a GCN track, but which one will I choose? Obviously, the Mushroom and Flower Cup tracks are completely ruled out. We can't have Sherbet Land because we already remade 2 ice stages. That's also the reason I didn't remake it earlier. Mushroom City wouldn't work when we already have Bridge. Yoshi Circuit is a bit too easy, especially since the remake removes most of what made it stand out. And DK Mountain, Bowser's Castle, Rainbow Road, and especially Wario Coliseum are too long for the DS to handle. That just leaves Dino Dino Jungle, which I actually think works pretty well. Obviously, the track would be a downgrade from the original, but hey, it's at least harder than Yoshi Circuit. The only potential issue with porting it over would be that the DS limitations probably mean the dinosaurs have to stand still. This certainly would be disappointing, but I think it could still work fine as the final stage. And hey, by bringing it back here instead of Mario Kart 7, that would just make the hype for this track in Mario Kart World all the more exciting. I would just keep the track as similar to the original as possible. Now, before I end the video, I will summarize the replacements I've made in the retro track selection. Firstly, I replaced Peach Circuit with Riverside Park and GCN Luigi Circuit with Dry Desert. This helps rid the game of starter circuits and makes a better variety for the Shell Cup. We replaced SNES Donut Plains 1 with Donut Plains 2 to make the Banana Cup a little more challenging. We replaced Baby Park with Peach Beach, as Peach Beach's gimmick wouldn't be ruined by Mario Kart DS the way Baby Park's gimmick was ruined. We replaced Choco Mountain with Royal Raceway. Although Choco Mountain isn't a bad choice, I feel like it would translate better to a future game, while Royal Raceway makes a lot more sense to be in Mario Kart DS specifically. And finally, we replaced Choco Island 2 with Vanilla Lake 1 to avoid these stupid bumps that throw you off course for no reason. Some tracks may have swapped positions, but a lot of the selections were the same. So, that's it for the video, guys! Here's my selections. Did you agree with my choices? Would you buy my version of Mario Kart DS? Please Would you have preferred it over the original? Would you just prefer the original? Would you like to see the continuation for Mario Kart Wii? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. See you in whatever my next video is.